All right. So I'm going to disclose right at the top of this conversation that I have failed at the creation of sourdough bread on a regular basis. And this illustration is going to tie into our conversation today because what I want to do is just have a quick transaction where you add the ingredients, you put it in the oven, and then out comes this beautiful sourdough bread. But however, the wonder of sourdough bread and the health and the nutritional value of homemade sourdough bread is that fermentation process, right? And so the slow and steady, the transformation, right, of the actual chemical compounds and the makeup of the ingredients in the sourdough bread that ultimately becomes this labor of love and something beautiful and wonderful to enjoy. So I, like many people, tried my hand at sourdough making post-COVID. And I will say that I've tried and failed, but I get back in the saddle on a regular basis because I still think it's a worthwhile process.
So good.
All right, Jeremiah, help focus our conversation beyond just sourdough bread making.
No, but it's great. Even that comment though, you've had a number of times where you get a starter and you work with it, and then you have to go back to a friend or somebody and say, "I need another starter. Apparently, I killed that one." Of it not working through. I think this conversation we're talking about is what things take time to really blossom and develop, and what things are just a transaction. And we talk a lot about with raising kids in this conversation of you don't have one sit down meeting with a kid and then now they've got everything figured out and they're good for the rest of their lives. Right? It takes a lot of small growth, new adventures, trying hard things, having hard conversations consistently and on a regular basis. And what we relate this to in the world of financial planning is what your relationship with a financial advisor could be. For some people, it's a transaction. It's a one-time, I showed up, I gave them some money, and they gave me my car insurance. And that's all I want. And I'm just going to move forward. And that's a relationship that most people, I would say, initially start off with their financial advisor. I rolled over my retirement account, or I set up an investment, I talked to somebody, and that was it. And now I move on with my life. A different perspective, a different type of relationship could be more of like a friend relationship or a parenting relationship, to say there's constant interaction, there's constant growth. And then when life is developing, it's not a what's the answer, it's who do I need to have in my corner? Who's the person I need to talk to? Who's my thought partner? Who's the person that's already up to speed on my life and can provide that great insight? And that's a relationship with a financial advisor that you could have. Someone out there listening, they could have a role where they have that trusted confidant, they have that trusted person in their corner, but that takes some time. It takes some doing. It's not just going to happen automatically. So that's kind of what we're talking about today, of what do financial advisors do all year? What do they do when it's not just tax season or it's not that one investment phone call? And how could that relationship be more powerful for somebody rather than just a transaction?
I mean, it reminds me of parenting. I mean, any relationship, right? Any key relationship in our life. So, that a quality of time often does come from a quantity of time. And we're in the midst of it. We're in the midst of raising our kids, but we have parents and we have kids that have now matured into adults that we aspire to have children that are similar, making similar decisions, leaders, dynamic individuals, community members, et cetera. And so what was the foundation that was laid up until that point? And this relates to the work that we seek to do with our clients, because so often, even the clients that are new to us come and even their expectations or their past experience of working with a financial advisor has really been for their investments. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's been a very siloed relationship. And maybe that's the expertise that they were looking for, or even still seeking at the moment that we get to interact with them. And our goal in developing that relationship is, we oftentimes use this word, expansive. And to expand the relationship requires spending time with one another so that we're continually feeding the relationship, just like we're feeding that sourdough bread.
To keep it growing. Well, I think that the value here is not just in hey, I want to hang out with my financial advisor. Admittedly, we like numbers. We talk a lot about taxes. I don't know what the most fun at parties, but we are often the people.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I'll speak for myself. I'm not the most fun at parties, but I am the person in a room that friends will come to and say, hey, I have a question. I need some help. I need some guidance. And that's a great relationship that comes from having some experience in this space, but also people seeing that as, hey, my situation, where I'm at. I really value your guidance, your wisdom. But as Laura said, that takes time. And so just as a story, we had a client situation where they had a question about some changes they want to make to their house, some construction items. And we had a phone call about it, but it wasn't starting from, well, what's your budget? And can you afford this? The conversation started very much so as, hey, how is this going to build into the plan you're already pursuing? How is this already going to complement what you're already doing? And we already knew their budget. We already knew their taxes. We already knew their investments. And we were able to very quickly step into being a thought partner. How will this help build what you're looking for in the future? And okay, how are we going to accomplish this? Here's the right levers we want to pull.
And that's one example of a lot of different conversations that we get to have, whether it's we want to start a new business or we want new capital to grow the current business that we have, or I'm looking for an exit. What type of exit am I looking for? A succession plan. What's most critical? Caring for an elderly parent. What does that actually look like? Developing an estate plan. Well, I've never really sat down and thought about what would happen after my life and what's most critical to me. Charitable giving, right? So there's a number of different topics that are all related to an individual's finances. This is the work that we love to do because we find that once you get to know someone on paper, so to speak, there's a lot that you can derive just by looking at the information and the data, what's important to them. But most of it comes through our interaction and the time that we spend with our clients to get to know what their underlying concerns are. That's not the first thing that you share at the first meeting. It takes multiple meetings and time spent together to really understand, okay, what are the key priorities here? What are the key concerns?
Yeah, that's great. I think in order to get to that point where you can have that conversation, for a lot of people's lives, especially people we get to the opportunity to work with, their life is complex, right? And so things are moving in different areas. And so to build out, we always start with a financial plan. To build out, we have 7 different areas that we work through. And really it takes going through each one of those. And there's some people who want to have a drag out full meeting. Hey, let's talk about everything in one day. I think most client experiences, telling your spouse, hey, we're going to meet with a financial advisor. It's an 8-hour meeting. We're going to talk about tax and invest. Man, I think we have a lot of people running for the hills. And so a lot of this, it takes time to develop that relationship. One of the things that Laura says on a regular basis, I think it's so powerful. She says, you can't microwave trust. It's something that just takes time, like your sourdough, like raising a child. It just takes time to develop. And with a relationship, at the end of the day, it's not just the math that has to be right in making a decision, but someone who really understands you and sees you and hears you, and then can say, yeah, based on all these together. So the timing that we work with our clients, often our onboarding is a number of meetings over a number of months of getting all their data, of course, but then understanding what they're about and then kind of building that plan and going through the different categories. So everything moves in their life from a red light, yellow light, hey, these need attention, this is urgent, to eventually getting to a spot where say, hey, everything's on track. This has been tuned up. We're doing this in a different way. These investments are performing. And that's not the end of it, right? That, in my mind, that's just the beginning. You now have that relationship. You now have that ground level. And now you get to start building as life develops, as opportunities arise. As you said, Laura, business opportunities pop up. Hey, is this for me? Do I want to co-invest with this other friend of mine to buy a building? Like, is that going to fit? Is this a good idea? Once you have that base and that key understanding of that relationship, those types of decisions, those become exciting and fun and not overwhelming.
Yeah. I love what you said about that, almost this like relief that a person, a household can experience when they know, okay, all the aspects of my financial life as they interact with each other, all of those are taken care of. I have somebody looking after that. And not only that, I have somebody bringing to me good ideas that will have a positive impact on my future because they understand what's most important to me. And someone who consistently brings me good ideas, someone who's a great resource. I can ask them things outside of what you would traditionally, what subject matter you would talk to your advisor about. That's where we seek to provide service to our clients. There's oftentimes, again, we'll sit down with a new client and they'll say, well, how often are we going to meet? And most of the time that question, if I can kind of get them to share a little bit more information, is because they had a relationship with an advisor that was very distanced, or maybe they met them at one point in time and then really haven't been in touch with them in the future. And that's because the nature of that relationship was more transactional. It's like, okay, I need you to set up this investment account, execute the investment strategy, and now we kind of let it ride. And that's a type of work that some people do in financial services. And the work that we seek to do is more proactive. And so between one meeting and the next meeting, there's probably going to be a few touch points along the way because our team, not just the two of us, is trying to understand what's happening in the client's life, how we can come alongside them, how we spend a lot of time as a team talking about how can we effectively communicate to our clients. We don't want to overburden them with too much communication. We want to be efficient, or we talk about becoming this like well-oiled machine, right? So the work that we seek to do is to bring proactive, positive ideas, that some of which may be new ideas, or some are great ideas. They just need to be executed upon, right? So how do we come from a proactive perspective? So if you're a listener and you're thinking, yeah, I mean, I think I had an advisor. I don't even remember what their name is. Or, oh, I met with them, but they're not really bringing to me new ideas, or they don't talk to me beyond just the nature of the investments in this one or handful of accounts. You might be ready for the type of relationship that is a little bit more expansive. Maybe that's what you needed in the past, but you might be interested where you can come to the conversation and say, yeah, but what if this? Or, yeah, but what does that mean for taxes? What does that mean for this next season of life? How do I share in this with my spouse or my partner? I've never done that before, right? A lot of our conversations are very far reaching because, again, they can be very interwoven. But what our goal is to create a space where our clients feel completely comfortable to bring a wide range of different topics and interests and concerns, and let's see how they all play together. It's so easy to want to have the right answer, right? And even as advisors, we can fall into that trap where we can look at the objective data, just like a physician would, and say, this is the set recommendation. And yet so much of our work is subjective. It takes a measure of humility to walk in and say, I may not have the best answer because this depends on what's most important to this client. It's not just purely objective in many circumstances.
I love that. And I think as we have this conversation, I think it's good to acknowledge this isn't for everybody. We have people who they're just looking for investment advice. And often we redirect them. We send them to another advisor to say, well, the way we're structured isn't just investment advice. We have others who feel, hey, I like this type of personal finance. I've got my fingers in lots of things. Me and my spouse, yeah, we're on the same page. We figured out we can move forward. We don't need this once we kind of start to get to know them. But where I think it's extremely powerful is when people have big dreams, big goals, that they want the support to get there. And their spouse, they want to be united and saying, we are doing this together. We both agree to this plan. We both see the vision we're pushing towards. I want to move forward cohesively. And we find on a regular basis, we're meeting with folks, that doesn't come out naturally. Most everybody has in a couple, they have a working financial relationship, but it's not united in the sense of it's going to get them to the next level. It's going to get their finances to the next phase that they really want to get to. So I think the clients that fit really well with what we do, the ones who say, I have a goal, I have a dream, I have some fears, I have some concerns, and it's time to really clean the closet, get a solid foundation so we can step into the next season. And that might be growth if you're a business owner, right? It might be, I feel ready for retirement. I know what my retirement looks like. It might be someone who just lost a spouse or lost a parent, and they say, I'm now walking to new finances that I need to get up to speed quickly on how these are going to benefit my family and my household. All three of those categories are ones that we deal with on a regular basis of folks who are ready to step into a relationship. They're ready to move forward to the next level. And that becomes the joy. That becomes the delight of walking through with somebody when they have those big needs or big desires. And like Laura said, it's not just let me look at the math and do the objective analysis, but let me get to know the person and build something that's really going to support where they're headed.
Yeah. When we talk about having a proactive service model, this is something that you do here. I hear a lot of other advisory firms kind of advertising for a more proactive service model. If I was the listener, the next question I would ask is, what does that mean? What does that mean to me? And so I can reflect on our own business model. I'm not sure how all firms kind of track this, but we've actually come up with a service plan where we track the number of times that we are proactively in touch with our clients. This includes appointments, but this also includes outward communication in between appointments to bring a new idea or a financial update. And these are customized based on the scenario that our clients are in the midst of. Like Jeremiah said, a lot of times we work with a lot of business owners or those approaching retirement. It might be another life transition. Those ones, if there's a transition happening, we're naturally going to be in touch more often. But what happens when there's a client who really doesn't need need, quote unquote, anything. Everything, life is kind of status quo. There's no major changes that are needed to their finances in order to support their life. Everything is kind of in this set it and forget it mentality. What then? What work can an advisor do then? And this is the part that gets me really excited because it is a request of our team to dig deep and to think about what are the moments that we can celebrate? What are the things that might be coming up on the horizon that even though we're in a season right now of kind of status quo, we can see on the horizon that these things are coming. So how do we get prepared now? So when that season comes, we're fully prepared. How do we bring them service ahead of schedule? So let's say they have a required minimum distribution that's due to them at the end of the year. At what point in the year can we resolve the communication of when they need to have the RMD? How much taxes do we need to withhold? And get that transaction done for them so they're not worried about it at the end of the year. Oh yeah, I remember I still had to. Right? So our challenge as a team is to be thoughtful and ahead of schedule, thinking ahead for our clients and bringing those ideas to them so that when they do arrive at that next moment, they feel prepared. And more so, it's a way to build trust over time. Somebody else is keeping an eye on my finances. Somebody else is being thoughtful about what's coming up for me on the horizon. So in the meantime, I can enjoy this moment of status quo. So as a financial advisor, there's never a season where you kind of let your foot off the gas, right? The challenge to the team is, no, these are moments where we get to lean in. What are some other creative ways that we can serve the client even right in this moment? So practically speaking, our team tracks a certain amount of touch points with each one of our clients on an annual basis so that they're never sat back wondering, oh, I haven't heard from Tricord in a while. Who is it that I call at Tricord? Who, if I have a question, who do I reach out to, right? And when they do reach out to us with a question, we want to make sure that we answer that or get back to them within the same business day. So that's from a practical perspective. If you're a listener and you're thinking, yeah, I hear this idea of proactive service model. What does it actually mean? That's what we seek to do in the way that we serve our clients. So Jeremiah, I'm sure you've got some things to add to that too.
Yeah, I think even some examples specifically of those seasons, like when someone's a business owner, if they wait until they're ready to have a succession plan, they're ready to exit the business, and that's the first time they thought about it, there's a lot of legwork and a lot of, you playing catch up. Hey, do I need to cultivate a leader within my firm? Do I want to reach out to competitors to see if there's a market there? Do I need to sell my business? Can I pass it on to family? Right? It's very late and you're playing catch up. Whereas to think about that 3 years, 5 years sooner, there's such value there. Same thing with kind of on the estate planning front. When someone has a health scare, often there'll be this item. When I was back at the law firm, you have people coming in and this just happened and we need this and we need we need to get all this set up and nothing's in place. There's a lot of urgency and stress that creates. Whereas if there was something previous to that, they had set up an estate plan, they got that structured, it allows them to walk into that season, that change. No one knows when that's going to happen, but they walk into that next season confident, things are already in place, things are already set up, and they can respond so much differently. It reminds me of I'm sure we've all been to a wedding where things just went extremely smooth. It looked like it just wasn't hard and everyone was very casual. You've been to other weddings, I'm sure people have there, where everything just feels frantic, everything feels late, everything feels running around. And a lot of that has to do with the preparation that happened the weeks and months before the event occurred, before the day of the wedding. And I think it's very similar. Like these life events are going to happen. There will be sicknesses, there will be business transitions, there will be retirements, there will be shocks in the market. All of those will happen. And what that feels like in the moment depends greatly on what happened the weeks, months, and years before that in preparation for it. And there's some of those things, of course, are surprises, but there's a lot that we get to walk through with our clients that will happen eventually. So let's set a plan for that. Let's put some items in place so you're prepared for the good days and the hard days.
Yeah, I love that. And this goes back to the parenting illustration, because maybe I'll have an experience with the kids that raises an eyebrow or something we've watched or observed or experienced in another household. And I like to say, well, that's good material. As parents, we oftentimes want to protect our kids from any adverse circumstance or difficulty or, potential failure, quote unquote. But those moments, I like to utilize the mindset or the verbiage like, this is good material, right? So that we have a chance to kind of debrief, because no doubt that circumstance is going to come up again later in life. So rather than solve it for them, how do we think through this together? And there's some comparisons here to the relationships that we seek to have with our clients, because it's built on multiple different life events that you've walked through together. And so when there's the next life event, you've got kind of a pre-existing foundation. And so that is the reason why when we have a new client, we're going to be in touch more often with them, because we're still laying that foundation of building trust and acknowledging what's most important to each other, getting to know each other, and how critical that is, because the goal isn't to necessarily avoid all of life's negative or difficult events, because that's simply just not possible. It's not feasible, right? But to build a plan that takes into consideration some likely events, some variables. But this is where the ongoing relationship is so critical, because life is guaranteed to throw you a hardship that you're not prepared for. And who do you call? Truly, who would you call? To our listeners, I think this is an important question to ask yourself. Like, who would you call? Who's the resource? Who's the go-to person that would give you wise, honest, holistic advice in those moments of your life? And just like we would for our kids, hope that they would call us if they found themselves in a pickle, but that's laid on the foundation of our relationship over time. So we talked through a lot of topics today, but what we want our listeners to walk away with is understanding the value that can be derived from a relationship with a financial advisor, one that's based in relationship over time. And one that's really founded on this desire to serve in a proactive way, to be supportive through all of life's events.
Yep. I hope everyone has enjoyed this podcast. Hopefully it's valuable, and we look forward to talking more next week.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about, or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit TrichordAdvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@TrichordAdvisors.com, or simply click on the link in the show note.
We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Trichord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.